Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Rabbi Levi Nu, for inviting me. Kollel of MTC. You just finished learning the halachas of mikvahs, and sometimes from learning it to the practical part of it is a far distance. No one is going to watch a moil doing a bris and then going ahead and doing a bris. Obviously, it's after learning everything, you go ahead and you get the practice. So I'm sure no one is going to build a mikvah from this class, and definitely not become a rav till you know it, the practical and the halachas besides it. Starting off with a mikvah, you start off with many questions. You're sitting in a small city and you have many questions. What's the first question? Where do I start? Who do I call? Why can't I use someone else's plans? Someone else had plans of a mikvah. Why can't I just copy his plans and I'll avoid everything? How do I go about permits? What size? How deep? How big does the hamshach have to be? Why do we need hamshacha? How much mekshamim do I need? How much will it cost? How do I heat it? What kind of filter? I heard there's so many different things, of a kosher filter, of a non-kosher filter. How often do I have to change the rainwater? How many preparation rooms? What kind of towels should I use? Do I need an oitzer, extra reservoir rainwater? And when do you call a rav? And so on. So we'll try to address all these questions and also show practically how to build a mikveh and how to go about it. The first thing is you need two people. Just like in the Mishkan, we had a Betzalel, we had a Moshe Rabbeinu. Betzalel was the builder and Moshe Rabbeinu was the Rav. So over here you also have to have the builder and the Rav. You can't go to the Rav and ask him every little question. He doesn't have the time and patience, especially when he answered all these questions many times, and it gets tiring. So the first thing you're going to start is with a builder. A builder knows the halachas very well. He knows what kind of cement, and he knows what kind of rebars, and he knows the sizes, and he knows about filters. That's called a builder. And although, for instance, Rabbi Grosbaum, which is a senior and very experienced, lives in Minnesota, he's considered a builder. Why? Although he knows the halachas many times better than a rav, but the Rebbe told him specifically that every time that he builds a mikveh, he should have a rav giving the hashgacha. Having a rav is a certain siyata d'shmaya that you get, that somehow the Eibishter will make sure that it shouldn't happen a michshol. So therefore you need these two people. I'll throw a few names, and I'm sure I'll miss, and so on. There's, let's say, Rabbi Grosbaum, which is a very senior one. There's a Rabbi Reichik, Rabbi Lazar Reichik, very familiar with mikvahs, and these are more, Rabbi Grosbaum's son, these are more the builders. Then you have the Rabbanim. The Rabbanim, there's Rabbi Fegelstock in Argentina, there's Rabbi Heller. There are some Rabbanim that will travel faster, there's some Rabbanim that will be harder to get them. There is Rabbi Shalom Beshachat, which is very well versed in the halachas and also in the building part. There's Rabbi Levi Garelik. There is Rabbi Brown. There's many Rabbanim today that they'll give the hechsher just like they give a hechsher on shchita and so on. So then there's Rabbanim that give a hechsher on a mikvah. So basically you have two people that you have to be in contact with, is the builder and the rav. Now, the first thing is I would like to start off is the different types of mikvahs. The reason to start off with that is to understand thoroughly what's so special and unique about the Chabad mikvah and the Bar Gababer, different than the others. And is it just the rainwater here or the rainwater on the bottom, or it's much more than that? So let's start off with this. Here I have a model of a Chabad mikvah, which you see that the steps and the floor is over here, and the bottom will be the Eitz Mekshamim. A regular mikvah in not a Chabad mikvah is basically, there are two types. One type I hope you can see. One type is a ber me'shamim that sits right next to the regular ber. In here, there is the full amount of 40 sa, which we'll talk later of what the quantity it is. And the water, the rainwater, comes down on hamshacha, which is a thraf, you learned that. It comes down on hamshacha and it goes into the ber of me'shamim. This ber me'shamim is going to be a ber hazriya, which means that the water goes in here and then it flows in to the mikvah, which the people are going to go toivel, to immerse themselves. The problem if the water just comes in from the top and it goes straight out into this mikvah, the problem with that is that the city water is becoming tahar while it's flowing out, while it's zoichlin, and that causes a problem. So therefore what they came up, in this generation they came up, that the water shouldn't just go in from the top and flow out, but rather it should go down. In the wall it travels down and it comes and it picks up the water from inside this rainwater, and then the water picks up and it overflows into the regular mikvah, which is, it helps a lot because it's not mitaher by zeichlin. It doesn't become pure while it's still running. But the problem is, after a while, there'll be nothing left of that rainwater. So they came up with another invention, and that is put a plastic in the middle and have another full amount of rainwater on the bottom with a hole connecting, so it's hashaka. The water is kissing to the top water, and then the water that's coming in here is going down the wall. It's picking up the water and it's flowing into the mikveh. This is called a ber zriya. The next ber is called a ber hashaka. Ber hashaka is a more popular one, and that is simply that the rainwater comes through hamshacha. It goes into this mikveh. This mikveh sits right next to the mikveh where the people are going to immerse themselves, and that through a hole connecting from one mikveh to the other, which is 4 fingers. If you could put your 4 fingers in there and roll it, that's the size that it has to be an opening, and it connects, and that's how you have hashaka. The problem with that is it doesn't mix as fast as the ber zriya, but nevertheless it also mixes, because every time you're going to empty out the regular water from this mikvah, the water over here will constantly flow from one to the other, and therefore in no time there'll be no original rainwater left in here. And we try to be machmer, to have the nasens of natlsa, that it should always be a majority of rainwater, original rainwater. So therefore, they also today do the same trick, that they put a plastic in the middle of the water and should have a full shear, a full amount on top, a full amount at bottom. So even if the top mixes faster, but the bottom still stays less mixed than the top. This is called a ber hashaka. Along came the Rebbe Rashab, and he went ahead and he wanted to have both advantages in one. So what did he do? He made the ber rainwater on the bottom. And over here you could see there's a trap door to be able to go down, in order to be able to make sure before you fill it that it should be perfectly dry, to make sure that it's clean. And once this is full, when the city water comes in, the city water will flow straight on top of the rainwater, which means that you have zriya, because the city water is going directly into the rainwater, and you'll always have hashaka, because there's always an opening, a 4 by 4 inch by 4 inch opening from the top to the bottom, and you'll always have that opening. So you have hashaka, means continuously kissing, and you'll always have the zriya, because when you let in the water, you make sure that it flows right directly onto the rainwater. Why does it have to go directly onto the rainwater, because if the city water will flow into this corner, and only with shloisha lugin is only 1 liter, it's a quart. If a quart of water is here, city water, and then it touches the rainwater from the bottom, you'll only have ashaka. You're not going to have the zriya part. But that's a side thing. So that's what we make sure that the water, the city water that comes in, goes directly onto this opening. Now, why can't I use someone else's plans? So the first thing is, the best thing is take a tape measure, go to a few mikvahs and see which size you like. There's no specific size that a mikvah has to be. It shouldn't be less than 4 feet. The reason for that is that a person should be able to go into the mikvah and toivel like a dog, like a fish, laying. Not fully laying, but laying. And therefore, if someone is very tall, 4 feet is what they were mashayir, that it should be, that it shouldn't be less than 4 feet. A lot of people are looking for designers, for architects, for so on. There's so many available mikvahs today. There's so many pictures around. All you have to take is choose one that you like and go to a designer and say, just copy it. You don't have to come up with a new invention. Everything was invented already. You'll save a tremendous amount of money and time if you just use someone else's mikvah that you like. Just copy it and do it like this. But why can't I use someone else's plans? Is number one, every city is different. Plans. Number two, the city won't take something that was stamped from a different architect, and he won't take the responsibility. Number three, there's a lot of different laws in every single state or country. For instance, someone was building a mikvah, and he was telling the architect that he has rainwater on the bottom and city water on top. And when he submitted it, the city said, rainwater? How much rainwater do you have over there? So he said, I don't know, 1,500 liters, 400 gallons. So he says, you need a special permit for that. You need the health department. You can't have you can't collect rainwater and people should use it in a private home. So it was a whole delay of I don't know how many months, and simply you could have avoided it by not putting rainwater. It's a reservoir of water. So that's why it's not advisable to take someone else's plans. And the main thing is that a person should understand well what he has to do and how to build it. So when he speaks to the architect, he could tell the architect exactly what is Amshacha, where does the rainwater come in from, how big does it have to be. He doesn't have to keep on calling for every small thing and go back of information when you could have it on the tip of your finger. Now let's start, what size? There really, as mentioned before, there's no size really, but you have to take into consideration when you're building, you have to be realistic, because water cost, heating cost, cleaning cost, if you want to empty it, it takes longer. If you want to fill it, it takes longer. So at first, when you're excited about building a mikveh, it's beautiful to have a huge mikveh. But at the end, you'll regret of overbuilding. That's number one. Number two, many people, when they go to the mikveh, they don't like something too big. If you're going to go to a jacuzzi, you don't like when it's the size of a swimming pool. So bigger is not always better. So we're going to start today with a mikveh, which is 5.5 by 7. Why the number 5.5 by 7? Because if you take this mikveh and you have the steps, usually steps is about 30 inches. So if you have 30 inches over here, then you need some space in this part to be able to lay down or to be able to go toivel yourself. So if you go down over here, which is 7 or 6.5, and then you turn around and you have this whole space over here, it's not too narrow, so 5.5 by 7 is a decent size. So we're going to work with that of the size. Now, how deep do I have to dig? I'll first give the measurements and then show pictures of actually how to do it and how not to be afraid of it. The first thing is, if you have a permit, if you don't have a permit, if you have a friend that has a tractor, you're going to build you're going to ask him to dig 108 inches deep. Why 108 inches? Because 8 inches will be cement. 2 inches will be cement and the rebars. Then you'll have 6 inches of pure cement. If your Rav will tell you that 6 inches is enough, it's also fine. But the further the water is away from the rebar, the less chances you have that the rebar should rust and then eventually create a hole and you'll have a leaking mikvah. So if you have 8 inches over here, then you have 30 inches of the Meik Shamim. Why 30 inches? If it's a big mikveh, you really don't need that much because we'll later see the calculations. But 30 inches, if you want to climb in, from the trap door, from this trap door, if you want to climb in there, and a Rav that's a little bit older and bigger, that wants to climb in there, to make sure that it's perfectly dry and clean, before you start letting in the Meik Shamim, you have to be able to crawl around underneath. And practically speaking, less than 30 inches, 28 inches, is really, really very difficult to get around. Also, if you want to fix something, if you do have a leak and you want to smear it with a water protection, you want to be able to move around over there, and therefore, advisably, again, nothing is written in stone, so you have 30 inches of the rainwater. Then you have another 6 inches, 4 to 6 inches of the floor where people are going to stand on. And then you have 52 inches of water. That's the water line, the water level that you should have, that it should reach to the middle of a person, of an average person. So you have 52 inches of the city water, and then you leave another 6 inches of that shouldn't overflow. While you're toiveling, it shouldn't overflow, and so on. So it's for cleanliness. And therefore, if you make a calculation, you have 108 inches. How wide? If we're going by 5.5 by 7, so 5.5 by 7 comes out to be 66 by 84, so you'll add another 8 inches from each side, from all 4 sides, again for the same reason, because you have 2 inches of the cement and the rebar, and then you have another 6 inches of cement, so that will give the thickness of your wall 8 inches. So if you have a total of 82 by 100. So this is basically the depth, the width, and the length. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly that size. You can make it bigger and smaller. When we come to how much Meik Shamim you have, we will discuss it and see that not necessarily do you need to fill the whole thing of Meik Shamim. In other words, the bottom boyer could be half the size. You can make it a little bit deeper, not 30 inches, but 40 inches, and go only half of the mikveh. It's a little bit harder to build, because when you build it with one pour. It's much easier to build one square, as we'll see in a few minutes. But it's also a possibility of building just a half, so you don't have to have so much rainwater. It depends where you live. If it's in a place that rainwater is a problem, then obviously you'll try to go exactly to 1,500 liters or 400 gallons. If you're in a place that rain is not a problem, the more the better, so then you have less chance that the water exchanging, with the rainwater, with the regular water exchanging, and therefore the bigger the better when it comes to Meik Shamim. Again, your Rav is going to decide on that. The trapdoor, what size trapdoor? So it's a good idea, if you can see from this side, it's a good idea that the trapdoor should be approximately 30 by 30. Why? Because it's the same size as the steps, so it doesn't stick out into the mikveh itself. Some mikvahs you go in and you see a trapdoor right in the middle. It doesn't look so nice. For some it may be even scary, especially if it has a hole in the middle, that's tashaka. But if you put it underneath the steps, then it's totally hidden. And also, which we'll speak about later, is when you bring in the water and you want it to go on straight on top of that opening, you'll want to bring it through under the steps, and we'll explain that a little bit later. So this is the size of the opening, the trapdoor, 30 by 30. It's advisable. You can do smaller if you fit in there. But remember, one day we'll all get a little bit older and a little bit bigger, and one day someone else might want to go in there. That's why that size is a good size and a good number. The Rebbe wanted there should be 2 holes connecting the top to the bottom. For a simple reason is if you stand on one hole with your foot and you're covering the entire hole, at least you should have another one always open. So that most probably is the most common reason. Also, that the Rebbe wanted that the top and the bottom shouldn't be 2 separate mikvahs connecting, but rather it should be considered like one mikvah. So if the opening and the top to the bottom, it's Rabbi Ashkenazi wrote an article about it, and he said it should be open with a square, not the way we see it in a regular mikveh where it's round, with a square. And if the square is a 4x4, then it's considered the top and the bottom. Like many halachas, it's considered like one room and one thing. So therefore, if there's an opening, a square, and 2 squares between the top and the bottom, then it's considered one mikveh. So really, when the advantage of a ber gaba ber, the way we make it is not only that it's a ber zriya, it's a ber hashaka, and the fact that it also, that the water doesn't mix as fast as the ones on the side, because on the bottom it's sealed, there's no water going in and out, there's no ear down there. It's also cleaner. So therefore, that's the tremendous advantage of ber al gaba ber, and that's how Chabad does it. Someone once asked in a city that they wanted also a ber b'tzad ber. So the Rebbe said, for machloikis, we're not going to argue about it. It's fine, but really, you don't have to have an overkill. You have that, and that is yotze all the days and so on. So one more thing before we go into the actual building of the mikveh is the hamshacha. How big does a hamshacha have to be? So the hamshacha has to be at least 12 inches, an amma, and then it should be, it doesn't have to, it should be wide 4 or 5 inches and deep 4 or 5 inches. Number one, it has to be on karka roya levloya, which means, according to many, it's 9 portions of sand to 1 portion of cement. If you mix that, it's a very, very soft cement. You have to be on top of it that it shouldn't crack and it shouldn't fade away, but it's a decent cement. Some say regular cement is also karka roya levloya. So again, Yerov will decide of today, why not? If you could use the real karka roya levloya, that means earth that could absorb, why not use that and go with 9 parts and 1 part? If you didn't do it, you have a mikvah already, you didn't do it, I think you have enough Rabbanim that will be able to share with you and say that it's 100% okay. Now, this is simply aesthetics, and I don't see why many people don't do it. When the make shamim or the regular city water come in, they come through hamshach on the side over here, and it falls in. What I would like us to suggest, if it falls in underneath the steps, then you don't end up with holes on the wall that the water is coming in from here. First of all, it doesn't look good, and second of all, it always turns yellow. It's not clean. If it comes underneath the steps, no one ever sees it. So really what you have is 4 beautiful tiled walls and the water coming in from underneath the steps, and it's going straight on to the bottom trap, which is the make shamim. Another thing is that if you bring in the regular water, the radiator pipes or any other thing, it has to be brought in from the highest part of the mikveh. Why? Because if it comes through in the lower part of the mikveh, then it could be that it's holding back water from leaking. So therefore, anything that comes in and out is brought in from the most top part and go down into the mikveh. A suggestion is also those pipes should also be brought in from the top of the steps into and then come down, because the radiator most probably would be either under the steps or close to under the steps over here. So therefore, bringing the pipes in, you don't come to a mikveh, you see 2 metal pipes sticking out, you don't know what they are, and so on. You want as clean as possible with no pipes getting dirty and it doesn't look good, and so on and so forth. I should say one more, or two more things before we get to the actual building of the mikveh, and that is how do you take out the water? The first thing is your architect is tell you, okay, where's the plumbing over here? So there is no plumbing. But some people that are not too handy or lazy or don't want to work too hard, what they like is to go over to the button, press a button, the water empties out, press another button, the water comes in, and so on. The disadvantage with that is that where are you going to put the pipe of the pump? First of all, there are some Rabbanim that have a problem with keeping a pipe of a pump inside. Maybe it'll turn on while somebody is using the mikveh. Maybe it'll go on its own, and therefore it's zoichlin, and you're toivling in a pasal of mikveh. So they'll leave the pipe in there, but they won't connect it to the pump. That's one way. Another way is to make it clean, that you shouldn't have pipe sticking into your mikveh. They put the pipe in the wall, and with a little opening on the bottom, not all the way on the bottom of the rainwater, but by the first floor where people stand on, and over there's a little opening. By pressing a button, it pumps out the water. Some Rabbanim have a problem with that, because if there's a crack behind this pipe that's in the wall, and the pipe is what's holding back the zoichlin, the leaking water, then again, it's something that's mekabel tumas holding back the schila. And that is a problem. So therefore, suggestion, $99 you could buy a mercible pump. When you want to take out the water, especially today, we don't take out the water as often as we used to, with the filtering system and the chlorine and so on. So just drop in a pump and take out the water. It takes that in half an hour and 45 minutes, you have the whole water out. You don't have to pay for the architect and for the plumber and for the breaking, for nothing. All you immerse is a pump, and it's mahadrim and mahadrin. Or you could use a regular pump. Leave the pump in the utility room, and just with a pipe, put it into the mikveh. It'll draw out all the water. The other side is another pipe, and finish. But going into all these other shalas of a pump, now again, it doesn't mean any mikveh that has it is that there's any doubts or any question. But I'm saying if you're building, take into consideration that it's not a big deal to put an immersing pump or any other pump that you can just move around, and it's cheaper, it's better, it doesn't break, and if it does, it's $99 and you don't have any issues. Now let's go a little bit with actually the building. Everybody's afraid of building, so let's start. If you have a piece of land in the back of your house or in the back of a shul, you want to build a mikveh, we're talking of right now a piece of land that doesn't have a structure over it. So you're calling a tractor, and he's going to make a hole. So I just want to show you that we did this once without a permit, without anything. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't have a permit, but sometimes you could just get away before anything. You have a mikveh built, and then you go for a permit, and it's much easier. So I just want to show you. Day number one. The Sunday afternoon, we went ahead. One person, a carpenter, went ahead and built a frame. 4 walls, 4 frames. If you see, the top part is 70 inches, the bottom part is 30 inches, and it comes in a little bit, so when the cement, I'll show you in a minute, when you pour the cement, you're left with an indent. So you have 4 of these forms. The following morning, Monday morning, the tractor came and dug. He dug this hole. It took him 2 hours and less. There was a gas line over there. It took him 2 hours. He dug the exact measurements of 108 deep, 88 by whatever it was, 100 inches, and he went for lunch. During that time, the worker put in the rebars. The rebars all around 4 walls, on the floor. You don't put it against the earth. Leave it a little space so you have cement going from all sides. He put together the rebar. The tractor came back after lunch, and he picked up with his shovel, with the backhoe, he picked up the walls, the frames, and he put it into the hole. So now you have a hole with rebars, with 4 frames, And this is what it looks like. I hope you can see. We'll pass around the pictures in a few minutes. And at the end of the day, which is a mistake, always have the cement pouring in the beginning of the day, because we were once in a mikvah, and it was the end of the day, and we started to pour, and somehow they miscalculated, and they were short in cement. A miracle that it was able to get another truck and finish the cement, because you don't want to stop in the middle of the pouring. So always try to pour in the morning, so you have enough time to, if you need more. So over here, you fill all the cement is being poured between the frame and the earth, with the rebars in there, and you have, this is the pouring. The following day, all you have to do is you take apart the forms, and if you can see, what are you left with? You're left with 4 walls, but on the bottom over here, you're left with a 3-inch lip. That's going to be the support for the bottom, for the second floor. So now you have the 70 inches on top, 30 inches on the bottom, and you have a full mikvah. But afterwards, very, very important, your Rav will tell you which one. You have to seal it with a sealer, because it will cause you a lot of problems later if you don't do it in the beginning. There are certain products. Now, some products are too good, meaning that they form like a plastic and it becomes one piece. If it becomes one piece that you could pull it off with one pull, then that causes a problem. Then you're creating a keli. What you want, it should be thin enough that it should protect the water from going out, like a balloon, the rubber of a balloon. But yet, if you pull it, it'll tear. That creates that it's not a keli, it's just a protector, which is perfectly fine. So this is very important to have that sealer before you put the floor. Once you put the floor, you won't be able to seal all over, because where the space of the floor is already cement. You might have a crack behind it. So therefore, when it's all open in one piece, that's when you put your sealer and so on. The following step is now just let me illustrate it a little bit. I tried to do this. If this is your pit, the 108 inches deep by 88 and 100 wide. So these are the forms that you're going to make. They're in total 70 and 30, and you have a little 2x6 or 2x8 that's going to hold it up. Because what you want that the forms should float in the air. You don't want it to sit on the floor. You want it should float in the air. So when you're going to pour the cement will come down and run underneath, and therefore that will create that the entire boyer will be one pour. So these are the 4 forms that have 2 sides that hold it up. The rebar is sitting there. You tie it in, make sure that it doesn't move. You have to be careful that it doesn't move in, that it should come all the way in. And you pour your cement. Some people like to start off from the middle and then build up the sides. Some people will go from the sides and it flows underneath, and so on. But you don't have to worry, like water. If you put in water, the middle will automatically pick up. With cement, it doesn't work that way. With cement, it's so heavy, if you start with the middle, let it rest for 10-15 minutes, and then you start pouring the sides, it won't push the middle to come up. So now you're left with a big mikvah. You took apart the things, and the next thing will be is you're putting your floor. How do you put your floor? Again, I don't want to, everybody should be a builder, but it's so much easier when you're sitting with an architect or someone is coming to your mikvah and questioning you. How do you do this? It doesn't look good if you say, I don't know. It looks much better if you know every detail, and you could put, especially to some people that like to come and show that they know about mikvahs, and they come and they challenge you. And therefore it's good to know a lot of things. It's just, I'll share with you a few stories at the end, but then you take a platform and you put it all along the same height as that little lip in the mikveh. Now and then you put the rebars on top of that. Now when you're going to pour the cement is going to go onto the platform and onto those 3 inches all around. Then it hardens, and then you go down with the trap door. You'll go down with the trap door, and you'll have to take apart all the wood, nails, and everything that's in that thing. Advisable, when you make that platform, make it with a lot of small pieces, because if you put one big plywood, it'll be very hard to rip it off. But if it's a lot of small pieces, once you get the crowbar in, you'll be able to remove them much easier. What kind of tiles? The Rebbe also wanted that the back of the tiles should be smooth, just in case a little bit water will get behind it. It shouldn't create a keli, and that does happen over the time that the grout many times corrodes, disintegrates, and water could get behind. And when you're draining the water and you think it's dry, all of a sudden you see that there's wet, and all of a sudden it's on the bottom. So it's, of course, you have to make sure that it's 100% dry, but in addition to that, you want that it shouldn't be that. But another reason also that it's, if it has some type of a keli, remember that these tiles might be considered a keli if it's not smooth, and the Rebbe doesn't say that it is. The Rebbe says if it's easy to get those tiles, you should try to get them. And it's many things in mikvahs, although mikvahs is something that we're so careful, because it has to do with Taras Yisrael, we go to the extreme, but there's a lot of things that the extreme is not always the best way. Sometimes this is what you have. So the Rebbe says clearly, if it's imefshe bekal to get those type of tiles, then you should get them, and so it shouldn't be a keli. Let's say if something that's blocking the leakage of the water, it shouldn't be a keli in there for a number of reasons. About a heater and humidity in a cooler, it's very hard to speak about because every city has different types of water. It's heavier water, lighter water. The temperature is different, so it's really, you have to have a professional. Before you ask your friend in Texas or in California or in Florida what kind of humidifier to have, first you have to find out of the professional locally, and then you can start comparing, but it's very hard. But don't forget always, the professionals always do an overkill. They don't know practically, they don't know what a mikveh is, they don't know anything. They take the size of your room, they take the amount of water, they have the Shulchan Aruch, the calculation, and sometimes they're so, they go overboard by doing something that you really don't need. In the mikveh itself, it's always good to have a design to have a few steps down, then a landing, and then the bottom landing. Some people will even put 2 landings, because if a normal height of the water should be 52 inches, and someone that's only at the height of 40 inches, if they stand on the top step, it's allowed, if they go to the bottom 52 inches, it's way over their head, and it's scary. One time the Rebbe came to the mikveh, and when they were building it, I guess, and he saw one was very, very deep, and he commented that it's not a good thing because some people get claustrophobic when it's too deep and you're surrounded by walls, and so therefore there's no need to make it deeper than you have to, and a person should feel comfortable there. But some that's very short should be able to stand on the top of the platform over here, and being able to bend over onto the steps. Someone that's a little bit taller, you can make a lower step over here. Someone that's even taller can go down a 3rd step. Most of the mikvahs, I think, have just one platform and then a step down. In other words, this part is a platform and this is the step down. Some people have platform, and then the size of the steps over here. That is the place where most of the people will stand, the taller people and so on. As mentioned before, if the size of the Mekshamim is too much for your place, you could go down to a smaller amount of you don't have to take up the whole size. You can make it a little bit deeper and so on, and soon we're going to come into the calculation of how to calculate how much water we should have. How to let in the water, I don't think it's just for I was in a mikveh. It's not it's a mikveh kelim, which is deraisa, but I was in Muncie in the supermarket over there, and I saw the way they brought in the make shamim. I took a few pictures because I thought it's very, very visual. You see that this pipe comes straight from the roof, it comes straight down. You can't have any elbows whatsoever. So you have this pipe going down on a slant into here. Then you have this pipe. The water falls here, and then it falls onto the hamshacha. So the trick, or when you speak to your architect to understand how you're going to bring the water, that's how you're going to. Or when you show them plans of someone else, you understand how it works and why no elbows are allowed, because that's something that creates a keli. This is from a mikveh that I was with Rabbi Handel, Olav Shalom, and Rabbi Fegelstock, Olav Shalom, Senior Fegelstock, the one from Argentina's father. And this is the pipe that's coming down from the roof. It's mechuber to the building. It's connected to the building. And inside, there is a smaller pipe, a more flexible pipe. And at the time, it was, we could use such a pipe. It's very convenient, because these pipes come, it's very long. You could have it up to 50 or even 100 feet long. If you're in a building of 110 stories high and you want to connect this to the roof, this is very practical. And at the time I asked them, could you bend it a little bit? Like if the hamshacha would be a few inches away, could you bend it? Or you have to make everything like pointing slap? So he nodded with his head. I don't know if it's a psak din halacha, because I don't want to rely on my memory. But he said a little bit is okay. In other words, it can be a loop. But if it moves a drop, I don't know if it has to be like film, dal, it has to be exact, and so on. Again, this is your Rav will tell you, but this is something, an idea, which is very practical. If it's a very high roof, that you don't have to go one sleeve into the other, because if you have to go one sleeve into the other, the lower one always has to be bigger than the bigger one, than the upper one. So if you're going 50 feet high, you can have the longest pipes usually is about 20 feet. The commercial ones, the one that goes in the street. Those are, let's say, 4 inches. So you're starting off with a 3-inch, going into a 4-inch, so it's 40 feet. But if you really want to go very high, that one is very practical. They use it for fields, for irrigations for fields, and over there they have these huge rolls that could go for infinite amount of miles. This is something else that I would like to share, that over here the hashaka was made in the wall, indented in the wall, which first of all it's aesthetically nice because you don't step on, because you don't see it. People that come in the mikveh over here, it's an unfinished mikveh yet, but it's that you don't see the hole. Second of all, it also protects that no one will put their foot there, not for safety reasons. If it's a smaller person, their foot could easily fall into it, and it's quite scary, and for safety reasons, and also that no one will step on it while toiveling, while immersing themselves, and therefore create some type of a problem. The easiest and the cheapest way and the most economical way of heating is copper piping, going a loop back and forth, connected to a circulating pump, connected to a hot water tank or to your furnace, and that's the easiest way. It doesn't give out humidity, because all the other radiators that take out the water and bring it back hot water, like in a filter and so on, those will leave humidity. This leaves the least humidity, and even less humidity if you cover it with cover the water and so on. That's, once you have your mikveh built, that's something you could think about. Now, how do I calculate how much make shamim I need? I just wanted to show you one picture that I didn't show before of what it looks like when you have one big pit. Here's a picture that you have one big pit, but you see that that over here the bottom has a 3-inch lip or landing on all 4 walls. That is going to be later for the floor, to hold up the floor. At the same time, you see over here it's smeared already, The bottom was smeared. I guess they'll smear the top as well, and so on. Now, how do you make the calculations of how much mekshamim we need? So, if we're going to look at 1,400, let's round it up to 1,500 liters and round it up to 400 gallons. The amount of square inches, the amount of square inches is 70,000 square inches. So if someone has a mikveh, let's say 66 inches wide, times let's say 80 inches wide, and we're going to go 30 inches deep, is 158,000 square inches. You only need 70. So as we mentioned before, to make it less than 30 inches is not so practical because it'll be very hard to get in there. If your Rav is fine with it, then okay. What you could do if you have that size mikveh, so all you have to do is not go all the way down on the entire mikveh. Just go on half of the mikveh. That should be mekshamim. Another thing is also, as not mentioned before, why can't you use someone else's plans? Because it depends how close you're to a foundation. Sometimes you have to move away from a foundation wall quite a distance, and you won't be able to dig so deep of 108 inches because you're digging under the foundation of the next door neighbor. So therefore automatically the top part will be shallow, and then the lower part where the kshamim will only be on half of the mikvah. I think basically this is basically covering of the three different types of a mikveh, the size of a mikveh, the reasons for certain things. I just wanted to finish off with filter. I would share with you a story of the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer, the son of the Ksav Sofer, the son of the Chassam Sofer, once told people that he was born in a mikveh. I guess it's in Preshburg. He was born in a mikveh that there was no heaters and so on. So what they did was they had two mikvahs, one next to the other. They filled both of them. The following day they would empty out one mikvah and stay with this one. Then they would fill it up, so it becomes hashaka, and they empty this one. Then they fill it up, it becomes hashaka, and they empty this one. Like this every day. You could imagine in no time there was no original rainwater left. And the Ksav Sofer says, I was born from such a mikvah. As a Chabadnik, I could say that in Crown Heights, for many years, there was not a Ber Gababer even. So, although we advanced tremendously in mikvahs over the years, chas v'sholem to say and to pass a mikvah that doesn't have exactly the way things were built today. For instance, you go to Shechita, today's Shechita is on a higher standard. They have a box, and the box turns over, and the animal cannot move whatsoever. And there's absolutely no shia, no drasa, nothing. Beautiful. In Beis HaMikdash, they took an animal, they tied it up, and they threw it down on the thing. They didn't have no box, they didn't have anything, and so on. I was visiting in the Schlachters in Morocco. They still do it that way, and people eat from the Shechita and so on. So there are a lot of things where we're mahader, but at the same time, does the hider take away from what we really stand for? And I just want to share with you a story that I heard from a person that his wife told him the story. That there's a mikveh here, not in the Lubavitch area, and by the Ungarische, that they were doing renovation. And when it came to one of the people saying, let's close down for a day, for 2 days. So the Rav, which is very close to Chabad, he was the Pupa Rav Alav Shalom, he's a bracha of the Rebbe Rashab, and the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe, which today is his yahrzeit, and so he says, no, we're not closing the mikveh for a day, I don't care. He said, but there's a mikveh down the road. No, I don't want to close the mikveh. Anyway, along comes a lady, knocks on the door, and she was not exactly fit the way she was coming from California, and she said she wants to use the mikveh. So they said, but there's a mikveh down the block. She said, no, I want this mikveh. Why, when, what? She said, I became niskarev by Chabad, And one mitzvah that I take, one mitzvah at a time, one mitzvah that I took upon myself is that I'm going to keep Taharas HaMishpacha. And I heard my grandmother, my great-grandmother went in who knows where and chopping the ice for mikvahs. I said, this is the mitzvah that I'm going to take upon myself. And so I went on the internet, and this is the mikvah that I found. And now he's sending me somewhere else. He went out of his kelim to hear the story, and he says, over here you see that sometimes you think, now in Chabad we're more trying to be mekarev and to go out to get people that will be mevater on a chumrah, which people made that a chumrah, but at least another family should be able to keep Taharas HaMishpacha, because that way's over. Some people don't care about filters, about this, because by them, they're going to go anyway to the mikveh, whatever it is, so they're not worried. And therefore, I just want to share with you about the concept of a filter. Today, there's what they call a kosher filter. What's called a kosher filter? A kosher filter means that it filters the water inside the mikveh. And that itself is no keli, it doesn't hold the water. It circulates some system, and it holds and it cleans the water. So therefore, we don't have the issue that the water going out. We don't have the issue that it might be left on, and so on. Even then, there are some people that even the kosher filter, they won't leave on while someone is using it. Again, because their background is more of, my people are going to use the mikveh anyway, and so on. But when you have to think of the cleanliness, the Rebbe knew for many, many years that they're using the regular pool filter. And I'm not giving a Hechshem pool filter. I don't say someone that's building a mikveh today should use a pool filter, but a regular filter. But someone that does have it, don't question it that there's anything absolutely wrong. There's 100% kosher. The moment the filter stops, there's hashaka, and it's 100% a kosher mikveh. And cleanliness was always known to be a very, very important point, because if one person stops going to the mikveh because of that, it's generations that you pushed away for a hidur, which is a very strong hidur. I'm not going to start with the Ravid, but at the same time, you have to know what's what. And that's why it's the most important is to have a Rav. The Rav is going just like Hechsherim. One Rav realized that you have to turn on the fire. One says that a little hot, warm plate in there is good enough. One person that is by the Sfardim, you have to, not it should be Bishalakim, you have to be, there's different standards. If you want to be a Machmeh and you don't rely on one Rav, fine, go to another mikveh. But each mikveh should have their Rav. The Rav should decide, knowing the city, knowing the amount of money he has. You know, it's nice to say to take the holy filter. If the holy filter costs $5,000 and the cheaper one costs $1,000, and you're living in a city that you want to build a mikveh, you don't have the money. Yeah, you could wait another 2-3 years to get more money, or you could build a mikveh with that. Maybe eventually you'll change it, but who says that is your hidur? The main thing is that's why it's so important to have the Moshe Rabbeinu, to have a Rav, and a real Rav that knows the stuff, that knows the difference, and he knows this, and he knows that, and so on, and he'll be able to decide what you should really use and what not. But to chas v'shalom, to passel anything, and so on. And I just want to finish off with a story that once we filled a mikveh, and it was kosher, was used for many years, and then there was a person that I could say a Baal Machloikis, and he looked up on the roof and he saw that the gutters, the two sides of the gutters were closed. When one day we'll make another video on how to get the water from the rain, from the roof, which is also, a lot of people make it much more complicated than it really is. There's very simple ways of how to get it, and so on. But he looked up and he saw that the gutter was closed from both sides. So he went to the city and he says it's not a kosher mikveh. He was mitzi las, terrible, terrible, terrible. Anyway, by the time I found out about it, the news spread. And I said the mikveh was built and the two sides were 100% open, and I was there b'shas ma'aseh. And what happened was that it was coming down after the mikveh was filled and it was used and so on. The parking lot was getting flooded. Always the water's flying all over. So we went and we closed both sides and we redirected the water and so on. But the machlekes still went. I came to Montreal to the Papa Rav, Yida Tzaddik. I went and I told him the story, and I said, I need from you a zettel that's a kosher mikveh. the Papa Rav grabbed my hand and he started screaming. A Yid that could be Moitzi Laws on a mikveh. A Yid, even if it's 100%, there's no mikveh that's 100% not kosher. If it goes through Hamshach, it's already kosher. And he got so upset. And he right away gave a letter and he said, before I went out, he says, anyway, because the Samach Mem, because the Satan put his fingers on it, try to change the water. It's only, I'm telling you, I myself would go into that mikveh, he said. But there's something about it, just because the Samach Mem, the Satan, gets very, very uptight when it comes to mikvahs, because he knows this is Taras and Shal Yisrael, and therefore he'll do anything to destroy and to disturb and machloikis, and that's why most machloikis is about mikvahs and so on. So the Rebbe always wanted to avoid machloikis, but at the same time, as in Chabad we know that this is the most powerful, the most the real mikveh closest to a well, or closest to anything more than that. But this is the real thing, because Sai Hashaka and Sai you have Hashaka and you have I'm getting tired. And you have both advantages, and they're both connecting and so on. So therefore, I would like to finish off that now don't go out and build a mikveh, but at least it'll be much easier. You'll know what you're talking about. You'll even be able to speak to the cement guy and tell him what kind of cement you want. You want the one with fiberglass. You want the stronger one. You want the one that has a waterproofing in it. You have already a small language to be able to begin to be able to speak to the architect and to the thing. A big yeshakoyach, hatzlacha rabba, keep on your avodas of Torah, and one day you want to speak about shchita, we'll bring a few knives. But till then, have a kosher freilich Pesach, and Taras and Shal Yisrael should beistein of alle gute brachas, and everybody should have bani chayim zayne revicha. Yashakoyach.